Alright, welcome to my first video about making pens. I've got a little slimline kit, Funline, slimline, 7mm. This is how they come. Got a little packet for every little piece, and what I need to do is get the tubes out of here. We're going to use the tubes to use for our measurements. And they're just little brass tubes. And here's the wood we're going to use for today. It is a maple burl that's been stabilized, which means it's had resin vacuumed into all the pores. So it's going to actually turn like an acrylic and a wood. And it smells really horrible, but it looks really cool. So just need to find some marks here to cut. Don't need to be super accurate. Always leave a little bit left that you can trim off. Once this is done, I'm going to take it over to my bandsaw and just cut those off. Bring them back. And I'm going to put my 4-inch chuck on here. I used to drill the holes on my drill press, but it was really tough to get centered and lined up, and when you're dealing with things that aren't quite square like this, it's just easier to put them in here and run the drill on the lathe. The wood on the burl, when they vacuum it, it tends to twist, so it's not a purely square or straight piece. So this is just a lot easier this way. Spin it, make sure it's mostly in the center, and then I'll put my drill chuck in. 7mm drill bit. And what I've learned over the last year, really, they tend to be kind of loose in the taper, and they come threaded with a 1/4 thread. So I cut off a piece of 1/4 steel rod you can just get at the hardware store, and made my own little drawbar, the wing nut and a washer, and that really holds it in there tight. And then what I like to do is bring it up as close as possible and just very gently move that in by hand after it's locked, so I can get a good center. And then I'll actually unlock the tailstock and slide the whole thing in by hand after that. But this just helps get a good start. And speed everything up here. You always want to be just really careful when you get to the end, because it'll just pop right through and break out. So I'll take that out and check it. Looks good. Do the other one. Both look good. Now the thing here, that has a sticker on it. When you're using one that doesn't have a sticker, or sometimes even if you do, just make a line across when you're doing your cuts. That way you can line up the grain afterwards. Here I'm sanding down one of the tubes to get ready to glue it into the wood blank. You just need to rough it up so the glue has some places to go into. You can see the difference there. And once that's done, we're ready for glue. I've tried a lot of different super glues, epoxies and things like that, but this particular kind of Gorilla Glue it really it works fast, it works well, it fills in everywhere, and it's just kind of the best that I've found. But you can use any super glue or epoxy. Just put a liberal amount on, and then make sure the inside of your hole is free of debris, and then just twist the glue in with the tube, and then I always flip it, kind of make sure it gets in on both sides, and then I'll finish it with the side that's going to be touching the other side. And there's tools that you can make so you don't get super glue on your fingers. You can wear gloves. I keep a little thing of acetone next to me if it gets really bad. Just wipe it on the table there. But we got both tubes in, glued. We're going to let those dry. Come back and we're dry. I think that was maybe half an hour or so. But I've done 10 minutes. It's really fast. And you can see in there, there's about a 1/16 of an inch extra. And we're going to use a barrel trimmer to get that square and down to the actual size of the brass tube. And now this is dangerous, so don't do this unless you've done it before, or wear a glove. I've had that rip off into my hand and cut me, not knowing how powerful that was going to be the first time. So you can put that in a vise. Just make sure you know that's going to be fast. You can actually feel when it gets down to the brass part, it will change how it feels, and you'll know you're done. But just check it, make it square. That tube in the center of that is to help scrape out any super glue or anything that got inside the tube as well. So good and clean, and we are ready to start setting up for turning. And by the way, I use a Win mini benchtop lathe. This isn't a super powerful thing, but it's got a 12-inch bed and an 8-inch swing, so it could probably handle quite a bit. Here's the pen mandrel. This is just a standard pen mandrel. It's a #1 Morse taper. These small lathes are #1. And they just fit right in there, and I give it a little tap. Don't hit that too hard, you'll bend it. Alright, what I'm doing here is just making sure everything is square and clean, and then I like to make a decision here about what's going to be the tip and what's going to be the end cap. This kind of depends on the grain and just what I think looks good. The little bushings that go in between that we turn down to. Can't go any further than that, or the hardware won't match up. Over there, a spacer and a diameter bushing. So just tighten that by hand, not too tight. You don't want to bend it. You don't need a tool for that. And slide the tailstock up. Got a live center in there. And I like to turn it on with it kind of loose, and then I'll tighten it here until I can hear it's solid, and then I'll tighten it up everywhere else. Bring up the tool rest and get that as close as possible. Safety first here. It's about to get messy. And this roughing gouge is the workhorse of all this stuff. It's going to make really big cuts and just take away a lot of material to get down to making this round. So I'm going to speed this up quite a bit. This is about 20 minutes or so of just turning this down to center, or to round, and moving the tool rest in as we get it smaller and smaller. I'm going to keep that as close as possible. And just check every once in a while, see what it looks like. If you can still see the stickers or the marks, you are not yet round. You'll notice I am also left-handed, and that sometimes is a problem, sometimes it's not. It's just a little bit different. So I've got all that down to round, and now we've gone to the round scraper, which is really, I use this tool for everything. I just feel like I can do whatever I want to with it. It shapes everything the way that I want to. So you gotta keep that sharp, usually after every project, but just look how nice that just cuts away. And you can see it's cutting like an acrylic, where it pops off like plastic, because that's embedded with plastic, but it's got some sawdust in there too. That's why you want to make sure you're wearing a mask and goggles, because it's really, really messy. But this is just going down for the classic pen shape here. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just want to show you how to get down to what we're used to looking at. I think some people are afraid to do symmetrical designs. I find it challenging and rewarding to be able to make both of the sides look the same. Instead of adding weird shapes and things, which is fun to do, but got that down mostly to where I want it with the round scraper, so we're going to use the skew chisel, and that's going to just knock off any accidental round scraper marks. Kind of just get that all even, and that lets you get down real close to the bushings too, and you can touch the bushings, they wear out over time, but I'm going to get right down close to it. So it just makes quick work of that. And when we're done with that, we're going to get ready to sand. Just kind of checking it out, looking at all the grains starting to pop. Can grab a 120 or 150. It's already pretty smooth to start out with, so we're not taking away much. Just want to get that down even, and you can feel it in your finger. Just don't let it get too hot, but you can feel where the high spots are, and they just come right out. And the thing you want to make sure of when you're doing a lot of work on a lathe that's spinning around, you want to also sand horizontally to get the grooves out that you've accidentally made, and that's really true with the first few grits. I do this all the way up through all the grits, but you want to make sure when you're using the 100s and 200s, you got to go both ways. And I've gone through up to 400 there. Just kind of cut away and did the sanding. Now, just for fun, I'm going to take some mineral spirits and clean it off, but this is where we get to see what this is going to look like. And here we go. Look at that. Do a little zoom in. That's going to be awesome. And then I'm actually going to go back over it with 600 now, just to kind of knock off anything that might have raised up with the mineral spirits. And clean it off again, see what we got after that. Burl's just kind of weird because you never really know what you're going to get in the grain. And it's really, really pretty. Clean it off again, there we go. And then we're going to let that dry, come back. And forgot to poke the exposure button on my phone, but here we go. Got some boiled linseed oil. There's 100 different ways to finish a pen, and a lot of the times I'll just use a shellac friction polish. I've used lacquer, even polyurethane, but for some of these with the the grains that are like this, and the fact that it's embedded with plastic, it's got a resin in it, it doesn't really need a super high polish. So I'm just going to let the linseed oil soak in, because that will actually harden and keep that protected. And then the resin actually does a lot of the work in that wood. And I'm not really pushing on here, just kind of letting it soak around. And then I've done a couple coats of that. Just come back every once in a while. And then this is a couple hours later, had some stuff to do, and everything's soaked in, nice and dry. Not technically cured, but it's dry and ready to work with. So we're gonna start taking it apart. And we just kind of go in reverse, loosen the tailstock, pull it away. And this is when you want to get really particular about making sure that you keep the parts in the same orientation that they come off. I've got a tray that's being used for something else that I'll put these in sometimes. And it's a little silicone tray my wife got me. It's really cool. But it lets everything just sit in there and not move. But you want to keep them that way to wherever you're going next. And we're going to go back in the house and assemble. So this is my little pen assembly press. It's a Miles Craft. It's really, really cool. Again, got the pen in the same orientation. And I'm going to grab the packet of hardware. Now all of these kits are really pretty much the same. They come with instructions if you're wanting to get into this on how to put them together, but I always go with the tip first. And it just barely sits in there. You've got to hold it. And then this is just really neat. You can pull the spring back, load it up where you want. And then you flip these tabs over, and that's where it knows where to end to put pressure. And then you pull the lever up on the other side. I used to do this with a little Irwin hand clamp, and that worked. You can do that. You can use a vise if you're really careful, but this is really, really easy to do it this way. This is the twist barrel mechanism. And the gold part goes in first, and it's got a little groove on there where you want to set it that gets it about to where the ink cartridge will come through. And I always usually go just before the end and then check it, because they're not always the same, it seems. So I'll put the cartridge in, screw it in, and check it. And this one actually ends up being a little bit too short. I just don't like the way it needs to come out a little bit further. So I'll take that out and push the mechanism in just a little bit more and get it to where it's looking pretty good. You always want to do things before it's too late, because you cannot take these things apart. I've tried. It's just not worth it. Looks pretty good. So now we're going to do the back piece, which is the clip and the cap. So that's the center band there. It slides over the barrel. When you come to the clip, it's really just find the place on the pen that you really think has the least amount of art, I guess is a good way to say it. So you want to not cover up anything that you want to show. Sometimes if there's even a defect or a scratch or something, you can cover it with the clip. On this, it's pretty much all the same. It's kind of beautiful all the way around, so I just picked a spot. Again, you hold it in and I'll do this the same way as the twist mechanism. Just push it in a little bit and then put the cap, or put the clip where I want it, and then really push the cap in and make sure it's not going to go anywhere. After that, slide it on and twist it around to where you think the grain lines up. On these burls, it's so hard. It was mostly the same off of the lathe, but I think I ended up finding a good place where it matched. But on other woods, it's really easy to tell, and in some of them, you can even mark the inside of the tube in the blank so that you can line it up after the fact. But that's it. It's a beautiful maple burl pen. That's how we do it. Thanks for watching.